The FBI didn't start with a bang, but with a backdoor deal. In the early 1900s, crime in the United States was escalating, and the federal government had no dedicated law enforcement agency to investigate serious offenses. The U.S. Department of Justice relied on private detectives and the Secret Service to conduct federal investigations. But that was a problem, because it meant that law enforcement was out of federal control. In 1908, Attorney General Charles Bonaparte, under the administration of President Theodore Roosevelt, decided to create a group of federal investigators. There was just one issue. Congress had already banned the Department of Justice from creating its own police force. Why? Because politicians feared that a federal police agency could become a secret government weapon used to spy on political enemies and consolidate power. But Bonaparte and Roosevelt didn't care. Instead of getting approval, they simply hired investigators using Department of Justice funds, completely bypassing Congress. And just like that, the Bureau of Investigation (BOI), the early version of the FBI, was born. It was created in secret, without the public's knowledge, and against the wishes of the legislative branch. It wasn't about democracy, it was about control. Fast forward to 1919. The United States was gripped by fear, a fear that would be exploited and manipulated. It was a time of mass paranoia. The Russian Revolution of 1917 had just taken place, and Americans were terrified that communism would spread to the U.S. Labor unions, anarchists, and socialists were rising in power. Strikes, protests, and bombings were shaking the country. In response, the FBI, still known as the BOI, launched one of the biggest violations of civil rights in American history. This was called the Palmer Raids, named after Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer. The raids were led by a young J. Edgar Hoover, a man who would later become the longest-serving and most controversial director in FBI history. Hoover was obsessed with tracking down anyone suspected of radical political beliefs. Thousands of people were arrested without warrants, many were beaten and tortured, and hundreds of immigrants were deported without trial, just for being suspected communists, anarchists, or labor activists. The Palmer Raids were a direct violation of the Constitution, but the government didn't care. The FBI had now established a dangerous precedent. It could act outside the law if it claimed to be protecting national security. But what happens when those in power decide that you're the threat? If there is one name that defines the FBI's darkest legacy, it is J. Edgar Hoover. In 1924, Hoover became the director of the FBI. He was only 29 years old, but his impact would last for nearly 5 decades. Hoover was obsessed with power and control. He wanted the FBI to be the most feared agency in America, but he also wanted to ensure that no one could ever challenge his authority. His solution? Secrets. Lots and lots of secrets. Hoover started amassing secret files on politicians, celebrities, and even U.S. presidents. He used illegal wiretaps, informants, and spies to gather dirt on anyone who could threaten him. It didn't matter if you were a powerful senator or a Hollywood actor. If Hoover wanted to control you, he would find a way. Even President John F. Kennedy was being watched. FBI agents tracked his private life, collected evidence of affairs, and stored it in Hoover's classified vault. Hoover was untouchable. No president dared to fire him because they knew he had dirt on them too. One terrifying fact? Hoover remained in power until 1972, nearly 50 years after first taking over. He ran the FBI like his own personal kingdom, using fear and blackmail to shape American politics behind the scenes. The 1920s and 1930s saw the rise of the mafia, an underground criminal empire controlling bootlegging, gambling, and organized crime. And yet, the FBI refused to acknowledge its existence. Why? Hoover publicly denied that the mafia was a problem. While other law enforcement agencies were cracking down on mobsters like Al Capone and Lucky Luciano, the FBI stayed strangely silent. Historians have long speculated that Hoover was being blackmailed by the mob. Some claim that the mafia had proof of Hoover's personal life, including rumors about his alleged homosexuality, which at the time could have ruined his career. Regardless of the reason, Hoover's refusal to act allowed organized crime to flourish for decades. By the 1950s and 60s, Hoover had turned the FBI into a domestic spy agency. His most infamous program? COINTELPRO Counterintelligence Program. A secret, illegal operation designed to destroy civil rights groups, black activists, feminists, and leftist organizations. The FBI infiltrated the Black Panther Party, sent fake letters to cause internal conflicts, and even attempted to push Martin Luther King Jr. to suicide. Yes, you heard that right. The FBI sent Dr. King an anonymous letter, telling him he should kill himself before his alleged secrets were exposed. This is the same agency that claims to protect Americans. By the 1970s, the FBI's crimes were starting to come to light. The Church Committee, led by Senator Frank Church, conducted an official investigation into the FBI, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies. What they found was horrifying. The FBI had illegally wiretapped and spied on U.S. citizens, planted false evidence and staged break-ins, used psychological warfare against political leaders, interfered with the media, and spread misinformation. This investigation led to major legal reforms, but the damage was already done. The FBI had proven that it could operate above the law. Even in recent years, the FBI has been accused of political bias, cover-ups, and overreach. From the Waco siege in 1993, to the Russia investigation in 2016, to the 2022 Trump raid, the Bureau remains a powerful and controversial force. The biggest question remains: has the FBI truly reformed, or is it still the secret power Hoover created? Power is a dangerous thing. It starts with good intentions, then morphs into control, then, if left unchecked, becomes corruption. The FBI's history is proof of that. This agency was created in secret, against the wishes of Congress, by men who believed they were above the law. It grew into an unstoppable force, led by a man who held presidents hostage with secret files. It waged illegal wars on its own citizens, spied on activists, controlled the media, and even tried to destroy civil rights leaders. Think about that for a second. The agency that claims to protect America has spent decades violating the very freedoms it swore to defend. It blackmailed politicians, let the mafia thrive, covered up its own crimes, and manipulated public perception. And the scariest part? It was never held accountable. J. Edgar Hoover died in his office, undefeated, untouched, and unpunished. The FBI kept running, its secrets buried, its worst crimes sealed in classified files. Even today, we don't know the full truth of what the Bureau has done behind closed doors. So ask yourself, if this much corruption has been exposed, how much more is still hidden? Has the FBI truly changed, or has it just gotten better at hiding its power? The Church Committee exposed massive abuses in the 1970s, but history shows us one undeniable truth: governments don't give up power. They just find new ways to use it. Look at the modern FBI. Some say it's a necessary force against crime and terrorism. Others say it's still a political weapon, still surveilling American citizens, still interfering in elections, still picking and choosing who gets investigated and who doesn't. The truth is, history is repeating itself. The FBI was born out of secrecy, deception, and unchecked authority. And no matter how many reforms are passed, no matter how many hearings expose its wrongdoings, one fact remains: power never polices itself. So, in the end, the biggest question isn't about the FBI. It's about us. How much power are we willing to give away? How many rights are we willing to sacrifice? How many secrets will we allow them to keep? And when the next scandal breaks, will we even be surprised? Or has history already answered that question for us?